three new letters. We're learning Het, Tet, and Yod. And before we actually get into the letters, I want to tell you a little bit about Kabbalah. If you've heard about Kabbalah, it's considered to be almost like a Hebrew New Age, where it's mysticism. And they get their name Kabbalah from this verb kabal, which means to receive. So it's like they believe they're receiving from God secrets from the Torah and from God's word. And then it becomes very kind of esoteric. Some of it is right on and good. Some of it is just silly. And some of it is not good at all. So I'm telling you this just so that when you see different websites and they're talking about the Zohar, which is their main book of teaching, you can pay attention that this may not be biblical, a biblical teacher that's right on. I just want to make you aware of that. The Freemasons also use some of these same philosophies. It's kind of a mixture of different things. It originated around the 13th century. So it's something that goes back to Bible days. It goes back to like 13th century. You might see people like Britney Spears and other movie stars wearing the red scarlet thread on their wrists. Remember, Whitney Houston was into Kabbalah and she used to wear the red thread here, but they believe it protects them from the evil eye. So anyway, Zohar comes from this word Zahar, and it means to radiate a circle of light or a warning of limits. And what's interesting is they start down here with this golden color, and it's related to the word for gold, Zahav. So look, Zion, Zion, hey, hey. The only thing that's different is this last letter. So interesting that they named their book Zohar because it's the golden secrets of God's word. So anyway, I wanted to make you aware of that. And interesting that a similar type word is used by the Muslims for their noon prayer. See this Zuhr? It's got the same letters, the Z, the H, and the R. So you can see how the Arabs and the Muslims have a sister language that they have the same letters for golden. Maybe that's because the sun is its highest at noon, and that's why they say they named their noon prayers after that. Who knows? But I didn't realize that until I was studying it this time around.
Well, and then it was in our homework too for Zion. Zahar, gold, number 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was coming back to me. And I'm thinking of like the golden calf too. That was
interesting. Yes. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Connection there.
My deceased husband, his 2 uncles were Masons.
Yeah.
And one was the head of their organization.
It's not a biblical organization, just so you know. It's interesting to do some research on that if you have family members involved, because a lot of people aren't aware that it's a cult. Anyway, let's move on. So today we're going to, as always, take all of our words to the very top of the mountain, all the way back to Hebrew. Why? Because my word falls like rain. And that's where it starts. And then the snow melts and it goes down here. And by the time it gets down here to the Mississippi River, way down here, it's muddy, isn't it? Because people have added things to the water and taken things out, fished the life out of it. So I like to think of this picture. When you're taking things back to Hebrew, you're taking them back to their mountaintop, meaning before people polluted the water, or it was translated from the original to Aramaic, to Greek, to Latin, and then to English. So we're talking 5 different languages before it trickles down to us. And things have been sometimes added or sometimes translated for political reasons, different ways. So it's important to know that. as you're studying, that you're going to get different people interpreting words in our Bible differently based on politics, and that's not surprising. I just heard I use the NIV, and I've heard a lot of Messianic rabbis say that it is not a good translation of our Bible. They find a lot of errors in the NIV. I was using the NIV. I'm not anymore. But jokingly, he called it the nearly inspired version, NIV. So you'll get a lot of opinions on different Bibles and different translations, just so you're aware of that. So
have you found a good translation that you feel is good? Have you found a good translation that you like?
I have been studying from several different Bibles, and we're going to get into that in our 6th class, and I'll go through some of that with you then. Okay.
Okay.
If you want something urgently, you can private email me, and I'll give you some information. So the Torah, what is the Torah? Let's talk about the Bible breakdown a little bit. The Torah, as most of you know, is the first 5 books of the Bible, or the Old Testament. They're very offended, by the way, Messianic Jews, when you use the word Old Testament. It implies that it's not useful anymore. And it tends to set up this mindset that that's antiquated, dusty, and now we're moving on. And that's not the way Hebrew works. So they don't like to call it that. They call it the Tanakh. So remember that when you're talking to a Jewish friend or family member. So Torah actually comes from this verb, yara. Yara means to cast forth. So isn't that interesting? Yara, when you cast something forth, that's exactly what he says. His word is cast forth like rain from the heavens. And it comes from this verb. As rain is cast forth, or seed is cast forward. I like that connection. In Deuteronomy 32, 2-4, it says, let my teaching, my Torah, fall like rain, and my words descend like dew. Now, we learned the word for word, didn't we? The very first class, devar or debar. We said that it meant bee, because a bee gathers things together in one hive, and words gather thoughts together in one sentence. And so interesting that words and Torah both fall on people, right? So when we speak life to somebody, it's like, think in your mind, I'm speaking seeds into that person's life. Because see, he uses nature, seeds, rain to show you a spiritual principle that you can't see. So that he demonstrates it and teaches with agriculture, things to do with your body, things like everyone can relate to. So he says it descends like dew and showers on new grass, like abundant rain on tender seed. So there it is right there in Deuteronomy. This is the 5th book of the Torah. So Hebrews 6:7 says, land that drinks in rain, I love this scripture, often falling on it and produces a crop, is useful to those for whom it is farmed, and they receive the blessings of God. So think of yourself as you're studying Hebrew and you're studying God's Torah and the scriptures, not just reading through them casually, but seriously sitting down and taking the time to look up words and pray, Lord, show me deeper meanings here. There's so much more if you're willing to take the time and dig in. And that's my prayer and hope for teaching these classes, is not so that you can speak Hebrew, not so that you can even read it. It's not even that important. What is important is seeing the beauty of the words and the Messiah in all of these words, because they point to him. So in the end, I'm going to give you every letter and show you how it relates to the Messiah. And we'll do that in class 6. So the Hebrew Bible, as you know, is called a Tanakh, and it's an acrostic. So T in Tanakh stands for Torah, or the teachings, the 5 books of Moses. The N in the word Tanakh stands for Nevi'im. A Navi is a prophet. So this is plural. Nevi'im is prophets. So that's the N. And then Ketuvim is the writings. Now, if you notice, our New Testament is also set up exactly like this. They have the Gospels, then they have the letters, then they have the prophecy at the very end in Revelation. So the three parts of our Bible are similar to the Tanakh. And it's important to know this when you're talking to a Hebrew person, to use the word Tanakh or scriptures, because they're very familiar with the Tanakh. And this is their whole Bible. By the way, some Jews, when you say Torah, include all of these. It's like a word that catches both prophets and writings and the Torah. And they just say in general, the Torah. I'm studying Torah. That means the whole Bible to some of the Jewish people. So I don't know if you've had a chance to go to HebrewForChristians.com, but it's a fantastic website. My encouragement for you this week is to go on there and look around and see some of what they have to offer. He does an entire Hebrew teaching class on there for free. You can go there and actually take like a more in-depth grammar class on his website. And matter of fact, he's the one who wrote this workbook that we use in Torah, John Parsons. It's his website, and that's where I got started. That's where I learned all my letters and my prayers and things like that. So that'll be part of your homework this week, is to go to Hebrew for Christians. So when I send you this PowerPoint, you can go check it out yourself. So what is the oral law and the Talmud and things like that? So the oral law is another name for the Talmud. And it's what the sages and the rabbis passed down orally after the Torah was written. Now, it is a commentary, basically, on the Torah. And you can look this up yourself online and get a lot more detail. There's a ton of stuff on there, but I don't have time to teach on all this. But there's two different types of Talmud. There's the Mishnah, which is the first one, and the Gemara. And there's 63 volumes or books. And you can get a lot of extra information that's like extra biblical that you don't get in our Bibles. And somebody just sent me, he works for Chosen People Ministry. He just sent me the free Talmud online. And if anybody's interested in that, I'll give you the site. But yeah, I'm going to read that in my spare time. Right now, I don't have time for that. But there is a place where you can go and read the Talmud for yourself for free online. So if you're interested, you can email me. The Mishnah was written down by Rabbi Judah the Prince. That was his name, and 200 Common Era. And it's the commentary on the Torah. It's also called the Jerusalem Talmud because it was first written down there. So just so you're aware, there's a Jerusalem Talmud and there's a Babylonian Talmud. There's two of them. So back to the Mishnah or the Jerusalem Talmud. The Mishnah comes from the verb shana. So see, you see SH, N, and then A. This is just a feminine ending and a prefix. So it comes from this word to repeat. So it makes sense, right? They're repeating this tradition orally, generation after generation after generation. That's where it got its name. The means by which it's repeated is called the Mishnah. That makes sense? So then the Gemara was written later, about 200-300 years later, and it's called the Babylonian Talmud. And you can read more why it's called the Babylonian Talmud. It's a long story, but basically it was written down and passed down while they were in bondage in Babylon orally, and then it was later written down. So the Gematria contains commentaries from the rabbis on the Mishnah. So you have the Torah, the main books of the Bible, their Tanakh, and then they have the Mishnah commentary, and then a commentary on the commentary. So you can see they really want the people to understand. These are called, by the way, fences. they build fences around the Torah. So you'll hear people online talking about building fences. They're talking about the Talmud, and they're talking about the Mishnah and the Gemara. And they're trying to keep the people in a little tight community and make sure they obey all the rules. And that's why they're making sure that they're sure. And you can see, now think about this. If they couldn't in the Garden of Eden, perfect setting, obey one law, don't eat from that tree. Do you think they're going to obey 613 plus these volumes and volumes and volumes? God knew in the beginning no one could completely follow and obey Torah. Just so you know, Torah doesn't save you. It's the blood of the Messiah that saves you. So whether you keep, nobody can keep Torah. That's the whole point. So anything you do in Torah to remind you of the Messiah is fantastic, but it has nothing to do with salvation. So just know that you can follow it if it's on your heart and your conscience and it blesses you, then I say go for it. But I'm not going to put that on everybody, because not everybody's conscience has that same opinion and feeling. And there's a lot of controversy in the Christian church, and you can go online and read all about it, this opinion and that opinion. What I'm trying to do is incorporate more and more and more in my life. I'm kind of easing my family and friends into the thought of, maybe not so much that and a little more of this. And I think they'll receive it better. Anyway, I'll move on. What is the Septuagint? Now, the Septuagint is the Greek translation of these three divisions I just told you about, the Tanakh. So the Septuagint is the Greek translation. And it's their whole Bible, and it was written by 70 Greek scholars. So that's where you get Septua. Septa is 7 in Greek. So that's where it got its name. The Pentateuch is also the Greek translation of just the Torah. So the 5 books of Moses. And that's where you get Penta. Think of 5, Penta. And so when you hear these words online on different sites and they quote from, the Septuagint says, or the Pentateuch says, you'll think, what is that? So I just add this here to kind of help you maneuver through all these terms. The Targums are the Aramaic translation of the Tanakh. And the Targums were written during the Second Temple period. And there's 2 of these Targums, and they're written by 2 different people, Onkelos and Jonathan. And you can go online and look this up yourself. It's so complicated and there's so much. I thought I'm going to have people stick pencils in their eyes if I try to give them too much. So just wanted you to be familiar with some of these terms. So how were the Targums, which they get their name, which means to interpret, how were they used in the synagogues? The synagogues in Talmudic times, the Targum Onkelos was read alternatively with the Torah. Interesting, huh? Verse by verse. And Targum Jonathan was read alternating with the prophets. So just so you know, different synagogues at different times in history actually used the Targums along with the Torah in their actual services in their synagogues. So I didn't know that until I did a little deeper study. The custom continues today in the Yemenite Jewish synagogues. Now, Yemenite Jews are right. So let's see, this is going to be backwards maybe. So if this is Israel and this is the Mediterranean here, then over here on this side is Saudi Arabia, and Yemenite is right below them. So the Yemenite Jews there use the Targum still in their liturgical texts. So that's interesting. There's so many different times, and there's 11 different types of Jewish people, and then you have the different languages, and it gets very, very confusing. So I try to keep it simple, and those of you that really want to study more, you can do that on your own. Now, I wanted to familiarize you when you go on Hebrew for Christians as part of your homework this week. I want you to look up 2 prayers, and I'm going to be sending you a printout of the Shema and the Lord's Prayer, or better named, the Disciples' Prayer. And you can learn this on your own if you want. It blesses the Jewish people when you know their Shema. Shema is the #1 prayer. Like I said before, it's said in the morning and evening. First thing when you get up, last thing at night. It's like their prayer. I love the definition of prayer is it's like the shade you open in the morning and the shade you pull down at night. So anyway, I'll tell you a fun story about the Shema. I think I just let somebody in. Who was that? Deborah. All right. You're muted though. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to let everybody unmute during the break. All right. So let me tell you a little story about the Shema. This is fun. So I was working at the cardiac rehab, and I had just learned the Shema prayer, and I had 2 Jewish men sitting on a bicycle, and they were talking to each other, etc. And I walked up and I said, "Hey, I'm learning the Shema." And they go, "What? Why are you doing that?" I said, "Well, I'm studying Hebrew, and I know it's a really important prayer, so I've been studying it, and I know it." And he goes, "No, you don't." I said, "Yes, I do." He goes, "Let's hear it." So I go, "Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Leolam Vayed." He started crying. And he goes, "My mother used to say that to me all the time." He goes, "Hey, hey," he starts calling Jewish friends that he saw working out across the wellness center. "Get over here, get over here. All right, say it again, say it again." He was so honored that a Gentile would know their most important prayer. And I went, "Oh my gosh, Lord, I had no idea what this meant to a Jew." So if you have friends or family members who are Jewish and you honor them by learning the prayer, I would write it down, and on my walks, I would say it, and then I'd record myself on my phone. So then it became a recording, and I just practiced it while I walked. It doesn't take long to learn. So anyway, you'll find it here along with the disciples' prayer. Now, why do I call it the disciples' prayer? When a rabbi had followers and you would sit at their feet and study, then each rabbi had a certain prayer for just his disciples. So if you prayed certain prayers, then they would recognize who you were following. That's why you read in the New Testament, "Oh, I'm a disciple of Paul. Oh, I follow Peter," because they were saying, "This is the person I'm learning from." And remember, he rebuked him and he said, "No, we're all following Jesus, he's the one we follow." But just so you know, when the disciples said, "Jesus, teach us to pray," they weren't asking to learn how to pray. They all knew how to pray. They were good Jews who prayed their whole lives. What they wanted was a prayer that was unique to Jesus as his followers. So when they said, "Lord, teach us to pray," Jesus actually took part of the Shema and incorporated it into the Lord's Prayer. And most Jews don't realize that their Shema is in the disciples' prayer from Rabbi Yeshua. And this is important to share with them because they think the Gentile religion is something, other than, anti. And so our job as Christians is to show them how they dovetail one another. And learning these 2 prayers is a good way to do it. I also then memorized the Lord's Prayer in Hebrew, which was another one of my goals. And it's a beautiful prayer. And I go out in the morning and recite it when the sun rises, and I face the sun because it's symbolic to me of the sun, S-O-N. So as it rises, I recite the disciples' prayer in Hebrew. Avinu Sheba Shemaim Yet Kadesh Shemcha, Tavo Malchutecha Yeseh Ratzoncha, V'Aretz Kasher Nasa V'Shamayim. Isn't that beautiful? So anyway, you can go there and find these two prayers. When you go to the site, on the side, it says prayers, and you can go there and find them there. But I'll also include them in this handout. So here's just a picture of the Torah, that one should recite this when you lie down and rise up. And here's the reference in Deuteronomy to that. And so here's little children holding their tzitzit and reciting it. And you cover your eyes because it's to not distract you from anything except saying God's prayer. Isn't that beautiful? So here's the Shema right here. Shema Yisrael. And here's the Yod He Vav He, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. We talked about that word last week. There it is. Aleph. And today we're learning the Het, and you learned the Dalet right here. So see, you're reading Hebrew already, and only your third week. Well, sort of. I could see some of you going, no, I have no idea what you're saying. Okay, so, but anyway, here it is, and you'll have it also in the PowerPoint. I just included it there. It's the first part of it. It's not the whole Shema. So it's the most important prayer, and it's said all around the world. That's why I love this. Talk about unity. Think about every Jew in Africa, Arabia, Syria, all over the world, New York, San Francisco. They're praying the same prayer, the same time, every day. And no wonder there's this community, this unity of community. And so it's recited in the morning prayer and the evening prayer. The morning prayer is called Shacharit. Shakar means dawn, the dawn of the day. So that's morning prayer. So that's why I connect the sun rising with the disciples' prayer, the Shacharit morning prayer. There it is. And then in the evening, Erev is evening, so it's from the evening. So it said that you put your right hand over your eyes, and if you're in a synagogue and you're a father with a son standing next to him, the father will actually cover the son's head with his shawl, his talit, so that to cover his son's eyes while he covers his own. And I think that is so dear and so personal and beautiful. Another thing I wanted to share with you is one of my favorite singers that you can find and follow some of his music online on YouTube. And his name is Michael ben David, or Michael, son of David. And he is a fantastic singer, and he has lots of good songs you can watch on YouTube. But I am going to come out of this a minute, and I'd like to play you him singing the Shema. And the Shema is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength, and so on. So it's in this prayer, and I'm going to come out of here and then go back in and share the screen and show you his video. We'll watch it together. If you can hear the sound okay, nod your head, or if it's too loud, go up or down for me, okay? Because I can't tell how you're hearing this. So here we go. How's the sound? Well, he hasn't started yet. Thank you.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Well, that is it. Any thoughts, questions? How'd you like that video?
That was really nice.
Nice.
You know, a friend of mine just called me, wants to do some kind of 100-man tap march that she wants me to choreograph and do something with the Mario Murillo outreaches.
Wow.
It's something, yeah, I said, as soon as I sell my studio, I'll be free to start this summer. So we're
Fantastic.
still in negotiations, but
Yeah,
that reminded me of like getting more visions of stuff.
yeah, yeah. I thought that would be a blessing to you guys. I know you like to choreograph things, and I was thinking they did just an okay job on the choreography, but yeah, it was beautiful though to think that he lives there and he ministers and walks around. I've watched several of his videos online, and it's fun to go on and check out his music and his website. He's fun to follow. I also, in the 6th class, I'll be giving you some fun music. If you like Israeli music and some worship stuff, I have some things I'll refer you to that I love. I listen to in my car all the time. And it helps me to learn my vocabulary as I try to sing the songs and learn them. It does help. So does anybody have any questions, thoughts? Yes. Is he going to share something with us?
I don't know what to say.
What would you like to share?
What letters you know from the Hebrew alphabet? I've got to get something. I'm gonna go get a book. You can share your book if you can go find it. I'm gonna share. Well, we can share that later. We have a book that we want to share at some point that I think everybody will like. It's a children's book, but it's a really cool story for grown-ups.
For grown-ups, is it have to do with Jesus then? The donkey, is that the connection?
No, it's not. It's about an adult man learning to read and write Hebrew.
Oh, fun. Oh, how fun is that? So what's it called again? Hold it up. Hold it up.
It's called The Donkey in the Garden.
Ah, okay. The Donkey and the Garden. Well, that would be fun to give to your grandkids. Matter of fact, I have a niece in Ohio who homeschools all 5 kids, and they watch my Torah every week. Can you imagine? These are grade school kids, and they know all their letters, and she's homeschooling them with a homeschool program, which I'll tell you about in the 6th class. I'll show you the workbook that I introduced her to, and all her kids, she has all the alphabets and magnets on her fridge, and all her kids are learning. They're deep diving, man. They're incredible kids because she's taken the time, and she has a whole room that's like a classroom in her home. They have a beautiful farmland in Ohio. So she gets all of this, and I'm going to tell her about that book, Rachel. I know she would love it.
Yeah. And we found some really great workbooks. Benjamin is tracing all his Hebrew letters and learning to write them, and good stuff for kids, but it's great for me too.
Yeah, see, look at you. Yeah, you're learning all your letters right along with them. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna stop right now on our break and get back to some Hebrew. Speaking of Hebrew, let's go back and learn our letters for today and some vowels. So today we're going to learn the U vowel, and the U vowel is a vav with a dot in its belly. Now think about this vav getting punched in the gut, and that's how you remember the little round thing in the gut of the vav makes the ooh sound, as if somebody just punched you in the belly and you go ooh. So when you see this next to a letter, you know that you say the letter first and then the vowel ooh. It also comes in 3 dots like this. So this is the consonantal helper. This is a regular standalone U or ooh sound. So I always remember this one like a little boy going down a slide for the first time, and he's going, ooh. That's just a visual for me. Ooh. And then getting hit in the stomach. Ooh. And that's how I remember that vowel. So another vowel I want to go over today, we're only doing 2, is the Shiva. Now the Shiva is 2 little dots, one on top of the other. And it looks like a colon, doesn't it? So I'm going to show you how it's used. It has a sound of almost like just a soft, it's just a very soft sound. And let me show you how it's used in multiple syllables. So in this word for enjoy, this is the word meaning enjoy. And it's beshimcha. So it's 3 syllables, beshimcha. Here you can hear the be. It's kind of just a sound. Here it's silent, and you just hear the M. So it's besim, and you don't hear it at all, do you? So it's called a silent Shiva, and this is a vocal Shiva. So when you hear it, it's called vocal. And here's another example. And just the word simcha, joy, sim, it's silent. And it acts also as a syllable marker. So if you notice, you'll see the Shiva, and that's the first syllable. And then you'll see a Shiva, and that's the end of the second syllable. So it's also a syllable marker. So when you see longer Hebrew words, you can say, how do I pronounce this? Look for the Shiva, and that will be your syllable marker. So an example, look at this, a psalm to David. So this is the word mizmor, that's the word for psalm in Hebrew. And this is to, the lamed, and this is David. You know these letters, Dalet, Vav, Dalet. David, remember, drop of ink? This is the I, so David. And this is to, and it's silent, so it's just la, all you hear is a real, not silent, I'm sorry, it's a real soft eh. So this is la, da, vid, to David. And this is mis, more. Okay, here's the first syllable, and it's silent, isn't it? Mis. You don't hear any so it's a silent Shiva here. So I'm just pointing this out for some of you who've been through the class 2, 3, 4 times and you want to just know a little bit more. I try to keep it fresh with more information each time I teach it. For those of you who are new students, don't worry about the Shiva because it doesn't matter. You're not going to be reading Hebrew unless that's one of your goals. Then you will want to know about the Shiva. So when it's at the beginning of a word, it has the sound, and I gave you the example. Look at the word Shema. Here it is, Shema. Is this silent, or is it, can you hear it? She. If it's at the beginning of a word, it always is heard as eh. So it's Shema. Shema, to hear or obey. If it's in the middle of the word, it falls at the end of a syllable, which I already told you. I put this slide in here so that when you go home and you're looking at your PowerPoints, all the information that I'm giving you orally, you'll have it written somewhere so you can look at it later. So here's the word for judgment. Look at that. Mish, it's the first syllable, pat. So this is a silent Shiva. Okay, there's some examples. And here's some more. I'm not going to go through them here because it'll take too long and everybody will be confused. So I'm only putting this here for my students who are on their 2nd, 3rd Hebrew class. The rest of you, forget it. You're gonna just have your mind explode. Okay, so let's go to our very first letter, the Chet. And remember, the Hey was, we remembered that it had a hole in the top, the letter Hey. Well, the Het has no hole. It's just like a doorway. And so the wind blows, it doesn't blow through this house, does it? So you get a hard sound in your throat. And that's the sound that you hear a lot in Hebrew. It's the sounds like they're trying to clear their throat. That sound, try it once. It's not, but you try to make it just a soft, like a little flutter in your throat. Its ancient symbol was a fence. And so it has something to do with separating or dividing or protecting or boundaries. It also has the opposite meaning, and it can be used in words meaning to be unprotected or sick or profane, as in the world. So interesting, you'll see this letter show up in both negative and positive words. Its number in gematria, how interesting, is 8. 8 is the number of beginning again or starting over. So interesting that the word for life, chai, is the letter for starting over. So think about that. When you're born, you're starting over a new life, right? And it is this same letter. And it shows that now you've been divided from the mother. And so you can see that that is in the meaning of that letter. So let's look at some examples of words here. And you will be getting this handout as well. I'm putting it here as a PowerPoint so we can all look at it together, and I'll make it bigger. So the word to choose or chosen is bachar. And here's the chet right in the middle of that. And it's bet, chet, resh. You haven't learned resh yet. So to choose something, you're actually dividing between two things, right? So see how that shows up right in the heart of a word that means to choose, because if I choose this one, then I'm separating you from the other one. And so that's why you see it in this type of word. Now look at the word for grace. The word chanan. This is two N's here. This is a noon, and this is a noon ending noon. It looks different, but it's the word for grace. And again, to grant favor, being worthy, to protect so that you can have an abundant life is in the word grace. I think that's beautiful. To protect you, give you an abundant life is that letter. It's also in the word dedicate. Here's the word dedicate in a verb form, hanuch. Now this is not an ending form, but I didn't put an ending because you guys haven't learned it yet, and I want you to recognize that this was a cough in case you're learning some of your letters ahead of me. But this is het, noon, cough, and it means to dedicate, and it's where we get the word Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the feast of dedication. So there it is right there. Next time you say Hanukkah, you say, oh, that means to dedicate. I learned that in my Hebrew. And that's where you get the festival of Hanukkah. And again, it has a female ending, AH. So covering, look at that. We said it's in the word for covering. And here's the word chuppah. And that's what they get married under. Remember, I said it's a fence or dividing. So think of the chuppah that covers them, protects them, and they get married in there. And it's also that letter of protection, getting married under the protection of the covenant. Isn't that beautiful how that shows up in the words for chosen, grace, dedicated, chuppah. All those beautiful words have the het in it. And then look, the word for life, same thing, chai. You've heard of lachaim. La is just a lamed letter, meaning two, and then chaim is plural. So it's actually, when you hear lachaim, it's two lives. It's a plural form, isn't that interesting? But it's to the lives of the people. So that's why it's in its plural form. So chai also is Eve's name, starts with chet. This is her biblical name, Chava. Chava is her name, and it means the giver of life. So I'm not surprised you find the het in her name in Hebrew, Chava. So giver of life, grace, dedicated, covering, all these words. And look, what was with the Lord in the beginning before the creation? wisdom. And it starts also with the het. Here's the word chokhmah. Now, do you notice the syllables? Here's your Shiva. Hoch, end of the first syllable, ma. So chokhmah means to accumulate knowledge or to learn something. So that's the word in positive form. Now here it is in its negative form. It's in the word for sin. Chata. Chata is the word for sin. And if you look at this as a word picture, I had a pastor once for a patient, and he was on the treadmill working out, and I came over to him and I said, by the way, did you know that the word for sin has the letter het, tet, olive? And here's the symbols of Satan's name. Think about this. This means to cover. This means to surround. And this means first or strongest. So the het, the tet, and the olive is to cover and completely surround you in its own strength. And that is the word for sin. So it's interesting to look at the different word pictures that go with these and just say, Lord, show me something more here in this word. And that's what happens. Also, in Satan's name, Satan. Well, we're going to get to that when we get to that letter. I'll save that. Never mind. Okay, so there's 7 key words that have the het in it. And look at this. You may have seen this around friends' necks who are Jewish. Next time you see this, they wear it on the chain. It's the chai. And see, here's the het and the yod. We're going to learn yod today as well. So look back here. Here's life. It's the het with the yod. And they'll wear this as a little reminder on chains. And next time you see them, you can say, oh, hi. Hi. That means life, right? I learned that in my Hebrew class. So see, that's an open door. I use my Hebrew to open conversation with Jewish people by noticing things like that and saying, oh, there's the letters het and yod. And they're like, how do you know that? Oh, well, I'm learning Hebrew. Why would you do that? Well, now I have a reason to talk to them about the Messiah because I've made a connection by their jewelry. And that's why I wear, by the way, this that I got in Bethlehem with the Star of David and the cross. And then on the other side are stones as well. So it's like the 12 stones of the 12 tribes. And I'll be talking to somebody and they will not look at me. They'll be looking at my thing and say, oh, I like that. What are you trying to cover yourself like a cross and that? And I just say, no, it's a way to open up a conversation and tell them more. And so anyway, you can go into a lot more detail if you'd like. So isn't it interesting that they were told if they wanted to live, they had to put the blood on the doorposts? And what does that look like? It looks like the letter het. And it means life, right? Chaim is life. And then to have life, they needed to put blood on the doorposts and the lintel, and they made the syllable or the consonant for life. And that's how their lives were saved. Isn't that amazing? The life is in the blood. Wow. So there you go. You have that in your handout too. Here it is in Hebrew, to life, right here. If you want to learn how to write it, to, this means in with to or for. It's a preposition. And there it is, in case you want to write it out. So interesting about the word to life. Look at this. Man does not live by bread alone. This is along. Hello. Anyway, I'll change that later. By bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God. Here it is in Hebrew, to life, lachaim, okay? Now, look at the word for bread. It has the exact 3 letters, root letters. And it means to struggle in its verb form. Bread means struggle or work. So when the curse came on the land in the Garden of Eden, God said, I'm cursing the land, and now you're going to have to work for your bread. It's the exact same thing. They were meant to have life in the garden with these three letters, l'chaim. But when they sinned and fell, now they're going to have to work lechem for their bread. You see that connection? Then Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Look at, they all knew what he was talking about. They instantly went to that connection because they know their language. See how important it is? You see these connections for yourself, and you have to just go walk around the kitchen by yourself for a minute and go, oh my goodness, Lord, look at what Jesus is saying. And look at the beauty of this language, how it's connected. And anyway, this is a beautiful thing to share with a Christian friend or a friend who doesn't know the Lord. You're going to lunch with them. I say, take a word to lunch. Okay, I'm going to meet a Jewish friend at lunch. I'm going to take this word lechem and to life and show them the connection and use it to witness to them. So that's why I say take a word to lunch, put all your favorite words in a book. And then when you're going to have lunch with somebody, it's an evangelistic tool. And so for those of us who are evangelists, this is really fun and special. And I love to do it. And look, here is the chamar is a donkey. Look at the letter het on the front of a donkey's name. And it's het memresh. Chamar is a donkey. But interesting, it means to bear a burden, his name. And what does the burden bearer have on his back? A cross. He's the only animal with a cross on its back. And that's what Jesus rode into Jerusalem on. Wow. The burden bearer rode on the burden bearer into Jerusalem. That is an amazing thing to share with Jewish people as well, because they're making connections. See, the Christian faith, if we make it more Jewish, people, the Jewish friends are going to listen to us because we're telling them things they don't even know about their own language and culture. When I went to a Jewish synagogue, I brought my Hebrew Bible with the letters, and I was following what the rabbi was saying, and I went, wait, it doesn't say that in the original. And I looked it and found it and circled it, and we had a break. And I went outside with some of the Jewish people, and I go, see right here, it says this is not the word that he said. And not to show off or anything, but they couldn't read the Hebrew. They didn't know the Hebrew. They really know what their rabbis tell them. So you see, it's important to encourage Jewish people to read their Bibles, because we assume they know stuff, but they don't. They don't know their Bibles. They don't know their prophecies. They don't know any of this. And so God is calling us in these last days to make a bridge with our Jewish friends and family members. I want to just end the het letter showing you 3 of these words that have the letter het in it at the end, because you pronounce the letter different when it's at the end of a word. So if a het shows up at the end of a word, as in ruach, noach, and mashiach, it ends with a patak under it, and you say that first and then the letter. So you say ach instead of cha, you'd say ach because it's at the end of a word. So het at the end has a different sound. Look at Noah's name. Here's an O on top of the N or noon, and then you'd say Noach. And then here's the Messiah's name, Mashiach, Mashiach, Messiah, okay? All right, that's that. Okay, the Tet, how do we remember what the Tet is? The way I remember this letter is it looks like a tiny teapot. It starts with T. So I think of tiny teapot, and that's how I remember. Oh yeah, that looks like a teapot. That's another T. There are 2 T's in Hebrew, and one is Tet and one is Tav. So when you hear a Hebrew word, another reason to know your letters is because when you're going to look it up, you're thinking, well, is it a Tet or is it a Tav? Because that'll make a difference in the word. Its ancient symbol is to circle or hold something, or to be twisted, or to surround something. And it has the gematria of number 9. So Tet is a rare letter. It's one of the rarest in the language, and not very prolific. There's very limited words that start with Tet. Let me show you a few of them. The very first word that you find this in the Bible is good. The word tov. So when you're going to say good morning to someone, you say bocher tov. Bocher tov. Bocher tov is good morning. Now, tov means to be complete. So when they say something is good in Hebrew, they mean it's complete. It's not like when we say, oh, this chicken soup is good. I'm a good girl. It's not the same in Hebrew. Good in Hebrew, in its biblical sense, means complete, ready to go, ready to function in its design and purpose. So when God created the world and he said it is good, he meant it is complete. It's ready to go. It's ready to function in its design and purpose. That's why he said at the very end, it's very good. It's tov meod in Hebrew, meaning it's completely finished. Don't touch it. Don't mess with it. Don't add to it. Don't take away from it. It's done. Don't mess with it. And it's the same thing in genetics. It's the same thing in viruses. You can manipulate them and then change them. And that's what they're doing with our language. They're manipulating the meaning of words in our culture. And they're going to change the culture by manipulating, adding to, or taking away the meaning of what? Marriage, a home, modern day family, all these sitcom movies. This is how Alexander the Great conquered the world. He said, if I can change their language and they speak Greek, I can conquer the whole world. And that's exactly what he did. So think about this. Hebrew is the only language that was resurrected from the dead. They were not speaking it for 1,500 years. And suddenly it gets resurrected in 1948 and before that. But it was fully being spoken because it became a state again. It became a country in 1948. And it's the only language to ever be resurrected. Isn't that amazing? It was only used in the synagogues and in their liturgical services, but not spoken on the streets. And then, of course, Aramaic was the sister language as well. So look at the word that we find the tet in, beten. Beten is womb. Remember, the meaning of it means to contain or surround something. Look at, here it is right here. Beten is a womb. Now, the way to remember this, the words using their symbols, this is a house that surrounds life. Nun looks like a little sperm in its ancient form. So if your bet is a house, tet means to surround, and life. So that's the name for a womb, a house that surrounds, protects, and holds life. Isn't that beautiful? That's a take a word to lunch too, by the way. And then you think of abortion, that it's supposed to be a home for the baby of protection and security. And they're going in and you know what they're doing. Okay, so Satan, here's his name. Satan, this is sin tet nun. Okay, same thing, look at this. This means to consume as to eat. Okay, so in its ancient symbol, what consumes and surrounds a life. What consumes it, eats it up. So you can think of Satan, that's his goal, is to surround and keep us from our divine purpose and function. And those symbols are in his name, what consumes and surrounds life. And that's what I shared with that pastor that day on the treadmill in the wellness center. He started to cry and he goes, oh my gosh, are you kidding? And I go, no, in those symbols, it means to consume and surround a life. And that is what Satan intends to do. That's why Jesus says, I'll leave the 99 to go after the one that Satan wants to hold over here in his kingdom. And man, every time somebody comes to know Jesus, I'm just like, ha, ha, ha. I took them off your shelf and I put them on Jesus' shelf. Or not me, but I always like mock him, like, ha, 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 you didn't get this one. Then look at the word baptize. It begins the word baptize. Tet, bet, or it's actually the vet. See, there's no dot, so it's vanished, and that's the V. So it's tet, vet, lamed, long letter is lamed, and it means to dip in liquid or to wash. So I always say, when people get baptized, they become pickled. Think about it. You can't unpickle a pickle. Once it's dipped in the rind and sits there and comes out, it's now transformed. It's no longer a cucumber. It will never be a cucumber again. It is now pickled. That's the same thing. When you get born again and baptized and the Spirit lives in you, you're never the same, ever. So I always just say, oh, you're getting pickled? And they go, what? I go, it's just a joke. But same principle, right? Look at the word for trust. Trust is the word here, betok. Betok, right here. Bet, tet, chet. Betok means in the center of, and it's the word for trust. So sometimes you'll get in Hebrew, the word faith and trust in English gets used the same, but in Hebrew, it's two different words. Faith is emunah and trust is betok, but sometimes trust is translated as believe, just so you know. So trust and believing is something right here. It means the center. To trust something is like my heart's telling me or my gut's telling me something. You got to trust that gut feeling. It's the word for trust in Hebrew. I find that interesting. Okay, last letter. We're almost done. What time is it? Oh, good. It's 11:15. We're right on time. Okay, so Yod is the only letter above all the other letters. And it's actually Yod or hand. So isn't that interesting? It's like the hand of God is above all the other letters. That's how I remember that. Yod is the word for hand. Yod is a hand in Hebrew. And it's called the working hand. So when you see a yod in a word, it means that God is working somehow. There's another hand in Hebrew, which you're going to learn next week, and it's ancient symbol, and it's the palm of a hand. It's the letter Kaf. It's different than the yod meaning hand because this one means the working hand of God. So you see the yod show up when God is doing something. Now think about this. Jacob's name, Yaakov, was his name. And when God changed it to Israel, he put what in it? A yod, and he became Yisrael, Yaakov. You see? So God was doing something when he put the yod in his name. It was God working a new work in his life. And that's what that means. Yod means the hand of God working. And Israel, same thing, puts the yod at the beginning of that. Yerushalayim, it starts with the yod. Israel, Jerusalem, okay? The name of all 12 tribes, Yisrael, was from Jacob. Okay, it means to lift something or to work or to worship. The word for raising hands in worship, just so you know, when you raise your hands, it's called yada, and it starts with a yod, and it's the word to lift up. So when you lift up your yod, your hands, yadim, you're worshiping. And that's where the word for worship in Hebrew comes from, yada, yod, yada. See that? So this, when you hold your hands up, it's like a baby. This is our work. This is our spiritual work as we praise him. And it's the letter number 10. And isn't 10 the number of completion, right? It's another number of completion, 10 in the spiritual realm. And we see the 10 commandments. Now think about this. I'm going to show you this picture real quick. I walked by this tree and I took this picture. This tree is lifting up its hands in worship, and it looks like yods. And this is I think it's Plumeria, Plumeria, the one with the pretty white flowers from Hawaii. This is what it looks like before the flowers come out. And I took a picture of it. I was walking down by the beach and I'm like, oh, they're lifting up holy hands. Look, the trees are clapping their hands. Remember, and it says that in the Psalms. Anyway, I wanted to show you that. That's fun. Okay, so Yod, just a few words and then we'll finish it up. Of course, the name, the Tetragrammaton begins with a Yod. So the Tetragrammaton, Israel, Yerushalayim, Yaakov, Jacob, all begin with the hand of God, meaning I'm doing something here. Pay attention, people. Here's Jacob's name, Yaakov. All right, here's his name before, and then he adds the Yod. And you can look at that yourself. This is the hand, Yad, here. And as I said, Tet was the least dynamic in the scripture. Yod is the most dynamic. You see Yods more than any other letter. Look at the word to go straight. Yashar, to go straight. This is El, meaning God. Going straight to God is Yisrael, Israel. Isn't that amazing? Yashar means to go straight. Now, what did Jesus tell his disciples to do? Go find a colt on Straight Street. If you were to look at that in Hebrew, it would be Yashar, Straight Street. And it's the name for Israel, Yisrael. When you follow Jesus and what the Torah teaches, you'll stay on the straight path. Isn't that amazing? All right. To know something is yada. And that's like worship with the hands is also called yada, but it means to know, yada. So if I know him, I want to raise my hands. Now, is a child going to go to another mother he doesn't know and raise up his hands and cry to the mother? No, he's only going to raise his hands to his own mother. And so it's a sense of intimacy and to know you. I run to you with my hands up. And it's right here in this word for yada, to know intimately. Okay. And it's how Adam knew Eve. It says he yadad her. He knew her. So it's an intimate knowing. It's to know sexually. Okay. And then here's Yashar again. Jesus, Yeshua. Look at his name right here. Yeshua starts with the Yod. And it means to save. It's also the name for Joshua, Yeshua. So Joshua took him into the promised land the first time, and Jesus takes you there the second time, and both of them are the same, share the same letters, Yeshua and Yahshua. Isn't that amazing? So Yabul, to bring home, and it's where you get the word Jubilee. Yavel, it means to blow the ram's horn at the Jubilee year. So here's the word for Jubilee, Yavel, Yabel. And it means jubile. And where we get Jubilee, they blow the ram's horn. Now look at this. The ram's horn is the same word, meaning to bring home. So think about it. When you blow the shofar and it says to bring home, what's going to happen on Rosh Hashanah when Jesus returns? It says he's going to send the shout from heaven. It's going to be the sound of the shofar. And guess what? At that point, that's the final harvest. See, it was blown at the harvest time. So Jubilee, Yovel, the name of the ram's horn, and what's going to happen when he calls us home on the final harvest. This is another beautiful word to share with Jewish friends. Take this word to lunch with you as well. And then here's the word for Judah, Yehuda, right here. begins the name for the tribe which Jesus came from. So look at all the words that you learned today with the letter Het, the letter Yod, the important things with the letter Tet, meaning the house where you're protected. It means so many important words. Now, this is overwhelming because you don't know all these letters and it just seems like, oh my gosh, my head is spinning. And I understand that. And just know that the first time you take this class, that's normal to feel that way. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just overwhelmed. I'll never get any of this. It's that kind of a feeling. But trust me, if you take this class 2, 3, 4, 5 times and you start practicing on your own, I think those of you who've been with me before can testify that it's becoming easier. Let me just show you this fun thing about the 10 commandments. The rabbis say that this 10th letter, Yod, is the 10th letter of the alphabet, and it means to covet. Don't covet. Look at the root word for to covet, hamad. And so what they say is this little letter is like a stick of dynamite for these above it. You light this one and everything blows up. In other words, all the other 9 of the 10 commandments have their root in this 10th command, which says don't covet. Because when we covet, it ignites all the other commandments. For example, don't commit adultery. Oh, but I'm coveting somebody else's wife. So that's the thing that lights the fuse. And now I covet somebody and I want that car. I think I'll steal it because I'm coveting the car. And you can find the word covet in all of these, good and bad. But that's a little thing that the rabbis give a commentary on the 10 commandments, saying that all of them have their root in coveting. So what are you coveting? Are you coveting God? Are you following the authority of your parents and God? Or are you stealing, murdering, lying, cheating? So makes sense to me. So it's the 10th letter, Yod, and look at this. 10 is the number of spiritual empowerments. We talked about that. Also, some say the acts of righteousness. So if you follow the 10, you're going to have a good life, right? Okay, how many fingers do you have? 10. Is that a mistake? No, it's the work of our hands. How about lifting our holy hands? How many toes do we have? It represents the way we walk out those 10 commandments. God commands us to walk in his ways. So he could have given us 7 toes. He could have given us 5. He could have given us 8. But I'm like, oh, it makes sense to me. It's a picture of the work of our hands in the direction of which we walk, as we have 10 fingers and 10 toes. That makes sense to me. Okay, that's how I'm going to look at it. Look at the word Yeshua in the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. You may have seen this before. This is the Yod, this is the Shin, this is the Vav, and this is the Ayin. Here, it's like the hand of God reveals those letters. Isn't that beautiful? So when you lift up holy hands, it's like you're lifting up the very letters in the name of Yeshua by showing the pattern in your hands. That always blesses me when I'm worshiping. And then here's Jesus' name, Yeshua. And I just put this in there to show you all the beauty of these words that start with the hand of God on Israel, the hand of God over Jerusalem, and the hand of God over the life of Jesus. And here's the homework from week 2. I put it in this handout this week, so you'll have it there and you can look at it and correct your own papers. And that is it for today. And it is exactly 4 minutes till. How about that? We finished right on time. Okay, so any questions, comments? Go ahead and unmute yourself and let's just spend the last few minutes together here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Since I'm a first timer,
Uh-huh.
As I try to review this, of course, I'm taking another language at the same time, which is probably really dumb because it's too much. But what do I focus on? Do I focus on just learning the letters and vowels, or do I try to throw in these words that you're doing just
No.
so I have something to tie it back to?
I think what you should do is first just learn the 22 letters and the vowel points. That's it. And you don't
Okay.
need to remember the words. You don't need any of that. Just know the letters well enough so that the next time around, then you'll add the words to your life. What I suggest is taking the words from these handouts for these letters. Like, okay, what are my 3 words in that handout on Yod? What are 3 words that really resonate with me? I'm going to put that word in the back of my Bible and try to write it in the Hebrew letters and then put its meaning under it. So you're actually having all this resource once you're done with the class and you're ready to study it in a different way. So I don't expect you to remember all this the first time through. What I'm giving you is a notebook where at some point in time, when you want to study it in an in-depth level, you'll have more information. And then because I'm recording these classes, you can go back and you have the PowerPoints. You can actually hear me explaining things. And then at the end in class 6, I'm going to give you more of the curriculum. I've taken 4 different curriculum for the grammar, but that's just me. It's a personal goal. Some people could care less if they ever take a more sophisticated grammar class. They just want it so that they can recognize the letters and look up words. And maybe that's all, Rebecca, you're going to do. And it's still going to enrich your Bible study like crazy. So I always say to people, if you're a first timer, just learn your letters. Know them, practice the song. Aleph, bet, bet, Aleph, bet, bet, Gimel, Dalet, hey. Do you know that song, Benjamin?
Yeah.
Can you sing it?
He does. Wanna
Sing it.
You can, let's sing alphabet. Oh, he wanted to show off his letters he did today also.
Oh,
Real quick. Here's your het. Wait, I just wanna. Okay, so that's good, but let's hear you sing alphabet. We'll repeat you. Nice loud. This is your chance. Maybe next time.
yeah, they never perform when you want them to, right?
He's a little.
Well, God
That's
bless you.
awesome. Great
Yeah.
job.
You're raising up a next little generation of Hebraists. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah. He usually starts the song so I can repeat him.
I
How
just want
wonderful.
to show you what I did today.
Okay.
I did gamble.
So you did.
I learned it.
You learned it pet.
I did that much time.
Isn't that fantastic?
Wow, we all need that book.
Maybe we should go to preschool. Maybe we should start there.
That's the best way. Yeah.
Show us.
My,
Can you show us the front of the book again, Rachel?
Yeah. If he practices cough too.
that's my
See, that's the
cough.
cough with the open palm, the blessing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Learning Hebrew the alphabet
alphabet. Okay.
This is the beginner
activity book.
you practice on paper,
This is my.
but it's from Bible Pathway Adventures. And they have
Okay.
workbooks on all the feast days and they talk about Yeshua, the Hebrew or Jewish Messiah, which is very cool. So it's, messianic.
Yes, how
So-
fantastic is that?
I did.
That would be fun to buy for grandkids and stuff and just start challenging the next generation to make that connection because,
Yeah.
maybe that's the only reason that I'm doing this. I mean, who knows? God knows. Look at this little boy. He loves it. So that's fantastic, Rachel. Good job on the Lamed.
I did a
Benjamin.
whole page of.
Do you know your
Yeah,
name in
wow.
Hebrew, Benjamin?
No.
Okay, your name in Hebrew is Benjamin. 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 That means son of my right hand.
Yeah. It's a good name.
Good name, Benjamin. All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
There's so much in the language. I mean, right there, just telling him his name and what it means. And then the 2 letters that we learned for life today, 8 and the 10. 18 is a Hebrew number. You know, when you go to a bar or bat mitzvah, like I've been to several, and you give the amount of money in increments of 18.
And tell them why.
Yeah.
Because the het is 10. I mean 8, and the yod.
Yeah, 8. You had it right.
So the letters for life, chaim, the het and the yod add up to 18. So 18 is a symbol of celebrating whatever your life event is. So if it's a wedding, or if it's a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, they give everything in increments of 18. If they're going to give them money, then they give them like 18 times 4 or 3 or whatever. And I think that's beautiful. It helps them remember what it's all about.
And then earlier in your teaching today, something you mentioned regarding into someone's life, you referred to Deuteronomy 32, 2 through 4. I thought that was so beautiful, because the Jesus calling today talks about meet me in morning stillness while the earth is fresh with the dew of my presence. You were talking about that dew.
Fantastic.
That mist. Yeah.
Don't you love how
So
that's a personal thing to you. That's so beautiful.
It all connected.
So girls, it's 5 after. I'm gonna say goodbye and let y'all go. And Caroline, I'm gonna print out week 2 and 3 for you, and maybe even 4, and just put them all in a packet and send them your way. So no more stress.
Okay, thank you. So what I have in the book that you sent me is originally from 1?
Yes.
The first book. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
all right,
you.
girls. Well, God bless you all. Have a wonderful week. Did you have something else to say, Denise? Go ahead.
Yes. One other thing, when you were talking about Satan, the sin, Tet and Yod, and you were describing each letter.
Yes.
I could hear the Lord say John 10:10, where the enemy, as Jesus says, he has come to kill, steal, destroy. But I have to give you life and life abundant. So it's interesting.
What did you say that was? John what?
John 10:10.
10:10.
It actually stood for those letters: kill, steal, destroy. And that's
yeah. The 3 things and then the 3 letters. Yeah. Beautiful. See, those are the kind of connections you make. You know, you'll think of something Jesus said in the New Testament, and then you'll make a connection from the word.
Right. That's what you call the dance around the kitchen table, right?
That's right. That's dance around the kitchen.
All right. Have a great day, a great week. Have a great week.
I'll see you next week.
Good to see you, Rachel.
Bye, honey. Good job, Benjamin. Bye, honey.
I'm going to get that book.
Say shalom. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom. Oh, Grace. Oh my gosh, how sweet. All right, God bless.
So cute. I can't believe how she's grown.
I know.